So I'm really happy to be here to speak with you. Entrepreneurship is like near and dear to my heart, and I like to talk to you a little bit about my business journey and life journey, and hopefully inspire you as you embark on your own, because you're at this exciting stage of your life. Are we up there? So my company, our parent company, is called Basecamp Franchising, and we call it Basecamp because we feel like the Basecamp is the support team for the people that actually go up the mountain and do that piece. We don't carry their packs and we don't do it for them, but we have the vision and we've been up the mountain many times and we understand what it takes to make it to the peak. So at our franchise company, that's how we treat our owner partners, and we're their support team as they work their way up the mountain to their own individual pieces of success. Our office is located in Salt Lake near the University of Utah campus, where she said I graduated in the very useful fields of piano performance and pedagogy, which really helps you in the business world. Not. My idea was that I would be a piano teacher and a mother, and I thought that's just a really great combination. I can be the stay-at-home. But what they didn't tell me, or I didn't really think through, is the whole idea that when your piano students are available for lessons, that's the same time that your children are home. So it didn't. It worked while I had little children, but came to the point where that wasn't as great of an income source as I had thought that it was going to be. So in spite of that genealogy, I do love BYU. As she said, I came here for 2 different semester abroad programs, and I have sent 3 children. My oldest daughter actually started out at BYU, and then when she got involved in her business, she had to transfer up to the U so she could be closer to her business, but then my next 2 daughters graduated from here. So it's been an interesting odyssey from piano player to business owner, but I've had a lot of fun along the way. Basecamp Franchising is the parent company of 2 successful upscale resale stores, franchise concepts, Kid to Kid, which we founded in 1992, so a little over 20 years ago, and Uptown Cheapskate. My goal today is to kind of outline some of the personality traits that you should be refining and to help you identify whether you have an entrepreneurial personality or a good business mind, or perhaps both. And then I'd like to give you a few ideas on how to get started on following your dreams. So, what is an entrepreneur? Well, I learned the word as a young child when they had surveys in school asking what your father did. And I was never exactly sure what my dad did, but he said, just tell him that I'm an entrepreneur. And he taught me how to spell it when I was just little. So what is an entrepreneur? Well, an entrepreneur is someone who organizes a business venture and assumes the risk for it. So how did that manifest itself in my dad's job? Well, I'll give you a few examples. He saw the blighted old bus barns on 7th East in Salt Lake City, and he loved the architecture, and he thought, that could perhaps be something like Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco. So he organized some investors and turned those old trolley barns into Trolley Square, which was Utah's only festival marketplace. And at the time, it was second only to Temple Square in terms of the number of tourists that came to it at this time. Then later, he was reading about a slide in Bavaria, and he envisioned summertime activities at our own local ski resort areas. And that's how we got the Alpine Slide at Park City, and he also built one in the Lake Tahoe area. Then he was fascinated with the pictures and stories of the old salt air out on the Great Salt Lake, which had burned down twice. But it was in the 1920s and 30s, it was just a huge destination. And so he thought about the opportunity of recreating it, and thus the modern Salt Air Pavilion was born. So
Then when I was a teenager, he was out in St. Louis, where they have this beautiful Union St. Louis train station, which was once the busiest and is still the most beautiful train station in the world. And he envisioned the possibilities of turning it into a shopping center, and complete with hotels and dozens of restaurants, which he did. So he also wanted to help prepare us as kids. There were 6 of us in my family, to learn to work hard and get some business experience. So my first job was actually, I was probably 11 or 12, chipping bricks at Trolley Square. So they knocked down walls, and they had these old bricks, and he wanted to reuse them. So our job was to take a hammer and a chisel and to chisel the mortar off of it and stack it on pallets. And on a really good day, we could make $3 or $4. I could earn a couple of dollars for 3 or 4 hours of work, very dirty work. When I was older, about 13, he set my brother and I up running a popcorn stand in Trolley Square. So it was our job to hire people, train them how to run the popcorn stand, and go in and count the money. And so after I was married, my husband Brent was involved in shopping center leasing, and he needed a tenant to open an art and framing store. He just thought that'd be really good to have in the center. And he couldn't find a tenant, so he said, Shauna, why don't you open this? And I'm like, I don't know anything at all about custom framing or whatever. Yes, I like art, but he's like, you can do this. So I checked out books at the library. I visited wholesale framing places and asked a lot of questions until I had it figured out how to run a shop. I remember nursing my baby while talking to customers and showing them beautiful photographic artworks. And I don't know that they knew that I was nursing her, but I was just holding her and covered up and selling. So I never made any money at that business, but I sure learned a lot. Later, there was a successful tenant in the mall that had a jewelry cart that sold gold-plated jewelry, or leaves and shells and that type of thing. And so Brent recruited me to be the new owner. And that was my first, I would say, entrepreneurial venture that was actually profitable. And I was able to expand my little gold cart from Trolley Square up to Latham Hills Mall, and I was also in the old ZCMI center. So I expanded that one. So I guess you could say that being an entrepreneur is part of my DNA. But what is it that makes a good entrepreneur? I want to talk to you today about some of the must-have qualities and then give you some ideas on how to proceed with your dreams. I think the very first thing is that an entrepreneur needs to be a lifelong learner. One major franchise company that I'm familiar with, Great Harvest Bread, as they survey applicants to become franchise, one of their questions is, what was the last book that you read? And that's a way that they screen franchise candidates. Another great question that I like even better is, what did you learn today? Your answer could come from listening to someone with knowledge about a subject, reading a book or magazine article or a blog online, or watching a program with an open and curious mind. I'm constantly having to relearn things to stay current. Now, I'm over 50, which means that I didn't grow up with computers or even use them when I was in college. In fact, when my husband was in law school, we thought that we were really cool and just state-of-the-art when we bought this used IBM Selectric typewriter, because it had a correcting ribbon. So if you made a mistake, you could go back and type white and then type the thing over it. But it's come a long way since then, and I had to go back to school after graduating to learn about computers, and I'm still learning. This past week, I've been researching social media. I went to a seminar on it, and because I know that that's something that's absolutely critical to helping grow our franchise companies and help our stores. And it's changing so fast that it's difficult to keep up. In fact, the whole business world is changing fast. It used to be that you would major in a certain field, and then you'd learn the traditions of the industry in that job, and you would stay there for the rest of your life. Well, that's just not the way it is anymore. Blockbuster Video 10 years ago probably didn't realize that they were going to be obsolete. And store after store is going out of business. And as strong as Redbox is now, it's likely that it'll be gone in 5 to 10 years as everything will be distributed via the internet. So in today's world, being a lifelong learner is going to separate the survivors from the failures, not just the good from the excellent. Whatever field you're preparing for now, that field is going to change, and in some cases, probably even be eliminated. Even if you're not an entrepreneur per se, you should realize that everyone is going to have to continue learning and changing just to avoid becoming obsolete in this rapidly changing world. By being here in this classroom, you're demonstrating that you have at least a little of that lifelong learner quality. Keep it up. As you work toward your own entrepreneurial adventure, begin each day with the goal of being able to answer the question, what did I learn today? And if you do, regardless of where you go with your life, into business, into marriage, into the journey of motherhood, or I've got a lot of men here, parenthood, you will daily become a more interesting person who has more to contribute to their community, their business, and their family. Okay, the next principle is entrepreneurs must apply what they learn. I've always loved the scripture in James 2:20. Faith without works is dead. I love that call to action and the requirement to do something more than just passively be there or passively believe. I believe the same thing. I feel the same way about learning. Learning without application is useless. So ask yourself, not only what did I learn today, but how can I apply the things that I learned today? How does that affect what I do, how I deal, in my case, with my customers or with my employees? How can I use that information to change or improve my family, my business, or myself? Let me give you a personal example about how applying what you learn is a crucial entrepreneurial trait. For years, my dad suffered from terrible acid stomach, which bordered on bleeding ulcers, and all the doctors attributed it to stress. He popped antacid pills like candy and single-handedly kept Tums in business to treat the symptoms. Then one day he was reading, some magazine, and it was an article about a doctor who found some evidence that excess stomach acid was caused by bacteria, not stress, and that the symptoms could easily be cured with antibiotics. His doctors hadn't even heard of this, but he talked them into giving him a round of antibiotics without going through the very expensive testing that would determine whether he had this bacteria or not. And it worked. He was cured. And a number of years later, this treatment became the norm for acid stomach problems. Last week, I came across an article about making your own laundry detergent as a way to stretch the family budget. Well, my kids are pretty much grown, and I no longer do a batch of laundry every day. So this piece of information is really not applicable to me. Or is it? The reality is that we have several 100,000 customers who do lots of laundry every week and are in a daily quest to save money. So I forwarded the article to our marketing department to add to our blog post and to post on Facebook to help our customers be better, smarter parents. I became excited about the possibilities of how I could apply what I'd learned to help my customers. So as you devour information every day from a whole variety of sources, always be thinking about how you can apply it to improve your business, your community, or your family. Let me move on to the next critical entrepreneurial quality. Entrepreneurs will improve upon a good idea. So to be an improver, the ability to take an idea, anyone's idea, and make it better. I wish I could say that I was the one that thought of a children's resale industry or the children's resale franchise. Well, I didn't. About 25 years ago, my husband and I were living in Ohio with our 4 children, and somehow I stumbled onto a shop that bought and sold gently used kids' stuff. Well, I'm an incorrigible bargain hunter, also part of my DNA from my mother's side. And this store here, Once Upon a Child, became my favorite store. My 2-year-old daughter, Brighton, wanted to be a princess, and she loved to dress in these. At the time, they were really full skirts, and she could spin, and they were beautiful, and they were very expensive. But I discovered that at the secondhand shop, I could buy her these gorgeous princess dresses for about the price of a cute outfit at Walmart. And I could buy matching shoes for every dress. And with that, at that price, I didn't care if she wore a beautiful dress out to play in the sandbox or whatever, because it just didn't matter. And so she was happy, and I was happy. So during the 7 years that we lived in Ohio, I watched the first Once Upon a Child store that I shopped at grow from 1 store to 27 stores. And they began franchising their concept in about 1991. So I dragged my husband into their shops to show him what a great business opportunity this was. I thought, I love these stores, they're so awesome. So we sat outside in the parking lots and we counted cars. And they were mostly nice cars from affluent customers, Mercedes and Lexus, and really nice cars. We actually went inside and we would calculate the average invoice amounts as we watched people check out. And we'd say, that was probably about $25, and add up, the volume of business during the day, and really ran the numbers to kind of vet whether this was a good business or not. And we visited almost all of their shops and dozens of other similar businesses. At the time, Brent was in shopping center development, so he was traveling around the country, and we just made it a point to stop in at children's resale companies. Well, we considered purchasing one of the Once Upon a Child franchises, but eventually determined that it was missing some critical elements. The first was that the marketing and the store design we thought was really ma and pop, and had little appeal to the affluent customers that probably had the best product to sell. They also didn't have an inventory control system. They hand wrote their price tags, and they used a cash register for their transactions. And the biggest problem that I saw was that their appraisal system was really primitive. What they would do is figure out what they could sell it for, and then they would pay the customer 40%, regardless of what the item was. And that was really puzzling to me, because I felt like they were missing out on an opportunity to gain more profit from their business. I was also a garage sailor, and I knew what was left over at the end of the day at garage sales, things that they could get without paying 40% for. Some types of items were clearly in higher demand and worth more, while others, like sleepers and onesies, were literally a dime a dozen. So it seemed like somewhat of a flawed business model. Brent was very confident that I would be a good Once Upon a Child franchisee, but he just didn't really understand what it was we would be buying from them that we couldn't create ourselves. So after much discussion, we determined that we could copy what they were doing, but do it better. So entrepreneurs take risks. So Brent left his job as a successful shopping center redeveloper and manager, and I gave up the easy life as a tennis-playing stay-at-home mom, and we packed up the kids and moved back to Utah. We purchased our the first simple assumption home we could find, because we didn't have a job, so we couldn't qualify for a real mortgage, and which was a very disappointing move for our 12-year-old son, who commented that we moved from the dream home to the shack. But remember that definition of an entrepreneur? As someone who organizes a business venture and assumes the risk and pays the price. Our families thought we were nuts, but we really wanted to be in business for ourselves, and we figured that we were still young enough that if it didn't work, we could start over again. So we were worried that if we didn't do it at that point in time, that we would be too comfortable with the lifestyle that we had achieved in the shopping center business and that guaranteed income stream to do it if we didn't do it then, regardless of how excited we were about the opportunity. So we thought, now's the time. I think we were 30-something. Okay, so we came out and set the goal to open a store. And we wanted to open 2 stores within the first year, and then to start selling franchises the next year. And I have to admit that the franchise part, that was my husband's brainchild. I just wanted stores. So we opened our first store in Sandy the day after Thanksgiving in 1992, and the next store we opened the day before Thanksgiving in 1993, making our goal by 2 days. So the next year we sold, the next year we sold our first franchise in Provo, Utah, and the franchise company was launched. That one's since gone by the wayside, but we have our closest one to here is in Lehigh now. So my role in all of this was to run the store, which was about a 60-hour-a-week commitment, to learn about the product and become a product expert. It was my job to develop the business systems that could be duplicated across the country, including creating manuals, we had 10, operational forms, and inventory management systems. So as I opened the store, constantly in my mind was, how can I teach someone else to do this? What system can I develop so someone else can be good at this business? And then we created a computerized appraisal system that allowed us to value the merchandise based on the brand, the style, and the demand for the item. So we pay, one of the differences between us and Once Upon a Child is that we paid a sliding scale percentage depending on what the type of item was. And that allowed our customers to receive more for the really good stuff than for their Walmart type things, and allowed our store owners to be more profitable. Oh yeah, add to that, fulfilling my church callings, be a supportive and loving wife, and nurture and develop our 4 children. So I was in a little over my head, especially with the computer development stuff. Remember, I graduated with a degree in piano, and I didn't own a computer, and I barely even knew how they worked. But I knew that we needed to incorporate those state-of-the-art business principles into our franchise to make it stand out. So I talked to people to find out what we needed and how to go about it, and hired someone to take my ideas and make them a computerized reality. Brent handled the franchise sales, the store design, the finances, and the marketing development. Again, we took inspiration from other companies as we improved, copied, their best practices. Brent was familiar with a children's store, primarily in Europe, called the Imaginarium, that featured this little small door for kids. That was the inspiration for our own signature pink kid door. Now remember, as we were developing that, we cut it out of a piece of cardboard and he stood it up, and the door's 5 feet high, and I'm like, that's not very small, I can walk right through it. And he says, oh, it will look small on the front of a building, and it did. So we copied and improved upon a wooden rack system that Once Upon a Child used that allowed us to merchandise multiple tiers of clothing and get more product into our stores. And then we worked to create marketing materials. As an entrepreneur, remember, it's critical to be able to take ideas and improve on them as you create your own business. And we took marketing materials from places like The Gap or Gymboree and a host of other kid-oriented companies as we tried to create a fun look and feel. Let's see. Over the years, I've operated between 1 and 5 stores at a time, trained over 200 franchisees and store managers, and grown our little store into almost a 100-store franchise. During this period, I learned that the 4th must-have quality of an entrepreneur is to be a problem solver. You've risked it all. There's no one there to tell you how to do it. You've got to take what you know and find resources to fill in the blanks for what you don't know to solve your problems. When we started our first store, we weren't profitable for quite a while. In fact, our stores today do more volume in their grand opening weekend than we did in a month, for our first year, each month for our first year. Our children counted on us to be able to pay the mortgage and put food in their mouths. And it was pretty scary for a while, not exactly knowing what was going to happen. I know this is a business lecture, but I'll take advantage of the fact that I'm here on the BYU campus to tell you that I'm confident that the only way that we made it through those first about 6 months before we started turning a profit is through obedience to the law of tithing. I won't go into detail, but when we were completely out of money, several little miracles occurred that allowed us to keep going until we were able to solve the problems and turn a profit. In fact, I will tell you just a short little story. I came to Brent and I said, okay, we have enough money that we can make it through January. We opened our business, remember, in Thanksgiving through the end of January. And after that, we'll have to go on welfare or do something like that. And I just didn't know how it was going to happen. And about the middle of January, I was in a small little fender bender accident that hurt my car and nothing else. So we took the insurance money from that. That was just one of the things. And we didn't fix the car, but we lived on it for another couple of months. So just little things like that. It was blessings, little miracles. Okay. In the franchise industry, new franchisees are wonderful, and they think you're wonderful and all-knowing, just like little kids are to their parents. Well, about 10 years ago, we realized that many of our franchisees simply were not listening to us. They'd grown up to be teenagers. We'd tell them what they needed to do to be successful, but they thought they knew it all, and they didn't want to listen to Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad suddenly became very dumb, and it was a really big problem. So we landed on a solution that's really unique in the franchise industry. Who will teenagers listen to? Their peers. Teens and business owners like to listen to their peers. So this revelation really helped transform our companies. That year, we started doing something that's really unique in franchising. We started sharing numbers, not just sales numbers, but all the numbers. Every expense, every labor dollar, and we shared those numbers across the system. So Store A could see that Store B was doing higher sales with much lower labor costs. Suddenly, Store A believed that they too could lower their labor, just like we'd been telling them all along. When Store C could see that Store D was buying 30% more each day, suddenly they became motivated to reach those same levels of buying. The results were absolutely amazing. That year, in 1 year, profitability increased 20% simply by peer pressure. So never underestimate the power of peer pressure. Oops, let me go back. So another huge problem in the early years was collecting franchise royalties. That's what we lived off and what we paid our staff from. But it always seemed like we were the last guys to get paid, and we were spending a lot of effort trying to collect money. So we came up with a solution that in many ways saved our company. We implemented a system of auto-withdraw for franchise royalties. We couldn't force our existing franchisees to do that, so we actually bribed them, and we said, we'll lower your franchise royalty by a little bit if you'll sign this auto-withdraw agreement. And from that point forward, we made it part of our franchise contract. So those are some of the qualities that make up an entrepreneur. They're dreamers and risk takers. Does that sound like you? Or do you have those qualities, but you're not able or willing to be a risk taker? Then what? Does that mean you can't be a successful business owner? Absolutely not. Sometimes the qualities that make up a good entrepreneur and a good business owner are found in the same body, and sometimes they're not. So what's the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur? Business owners don't necessarily have to take as much risk. They might go into a proven industry or purchase a franchise. They might work for a company to learn the business and then buy them out. They're not starting from scratch, so the risk is a little bit lower. My father was an entrepreneur who risked everything on the next big venture. My father-in-law was exactly the opposite. He paid for his home in cash, worked for the IRS for 30 years, and slowly and conservatively built a real estate portfolio that's been a wonderful legacy for my mother-in-law, who was widowed 20 years ago. So what qualities do you need to become a successful business owner? The first one is to be organized. Lack of organization makes a business unsustainable. A number of years ago, we were finalists in the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year competition. And the winner that year in our category was a young guy named Sean Nelson. He started Lovesack. His company at the time was growing at an amazing pace. And he was dynamic and outstanding. He won $1 million on the TV show called The Rebel Billionaire. But unfortunately, lack of organization brought it all crashing down. The manufacturing plant ran out of zippers because no one was maintaining adequate supply levels. The stores didn't get their product on time, and the organization fell apart, and so did the company. I'm not privy to exactly what mistakes were made, but a former employee attributed it to a chaotic environment lacking organization. If you're organized, the next trait is kind of natural, and that's the ability to prioritize. One of the biggest challenges that I face as I consult with our franchisees is helping them learn to prioritize their activities. The question I try to get them to ask is, what's my highest and best use? When our owners come into the store and they don't have a clear idea of what their highest and best use is, the business doesn't run well. Let me give you an example. We have this wonderful store owner in Texas who has 6 young children, many of whom she homeschools. So she runs a very busy store and is this human dynamo. The problem is that she simply cannot do it all. So when she comes into the store, she goes into what I call technician mode, if any of you have read the E-Myth. Just getting stuff done, knocking out the buys, organizing the racks, making the store look good. And those are great uses of her time, and it's stuff that definitely needs to be done. But what she really needs to do is to hire and train a staff to do those things when she's not there. So if she was to spend her time invested in training, which right now would be her highest and best use, it would pay big dividends in the performance of her company and her sanity. Time is our scarcest resource, and there's no way we can make more of it. The only thing we can do is use it better. One of my favorite quotes, "We don't waste time. That's impossible. We waste ourselves." In a business or running a home, you should constantly be thinking, what can I do now that will have the most impact on the success of my business or my children's lives or my family situation or whatever? So as you go about your daily activities, whether it's preparing for an upcoming assignment or a test, planning for your future, working in a business, or juggling career and family, always spend the majority of your time and energy dealing with the things that are your highest and best use activities. The third essential quality of a successful business person is, is commitment. I once had an owner tell me that she made a promise to herself that she wouldn't let business get in the way of her family. After several years of being an absentee owner who didn't implement key management systems, her business was in a free fall. She was trying to juggle the responsibilities of being a single parent and a business owner, and at that point she'd chosen her family. I'm not saying that was the wrong decision for her. I respect her commitment to her family and the kids. But unfortunately, commitment to her business was key to the success in that part of her life. At some point, she's got to decide, can I give up a few months of being the preschool and kindergarten chauffeur so I can make changes necessary to turn my business around? How can I change things in my life to make a commitment to my business as well as to my family? Well, options include hiring a nanny who could cover for her during key business hours, maybe moving her kids to a school that's close to the store, or hiring and training a store staff to be better equipped to handle the tasks there. For her business to work, somehow she needed to increase her commitment level. When we started Kid to Kid, we had to make it work. If we needed more customers, we spent family night running flyers around to different neighborhoods with the little ones in strollers. We put flyers on cars at ball games, movie theater parking lots, and grocery stores. One time I told the kids I'd pay them 5 cents a piece to put flyers on houses in this nice neighborhood. So I drove them to the neighborhood, dropped them off, and went back to run the store. Well, they came to a church parking lot that was filled with cars, and they were just so excited. Oh, we've hit the jackpot. So they papered every car. And about an hour later, I got a phone call from a very upset woman wondering at the lack of respect for her deceased friend. The cars were at a funeral. Oops. So bear with me while I brag a little bit about my family and talk about juggling the role of being a business owner, wife, and mother. I carry my laptop with me wherever I go. My girls are involved in all kinds of lessons and activities, and I'll drive them to rehearsals or dance class and sit in the car or the foyer and do my work or make phone calls. Our quality time is often in the car, catching up on their day and finding out about the social drama at school. I get up early and I go to bed late, often working on projects or solving problems. I'm a multitasking maniac, driving my husband crazy because I fold socks while we have a rare date night in front of the TV. Somehow the kids have survived. They grew up in the stores and didn't get a lot of individual attention. In fact, it's not uncommon now for us to all have our laptops out and be working, the kids on homework and I on work things. We cherish our family vacations as quality time away from work, exploring foreign lands, skiing, or scuba diving together. And thanks to a bunch of talented kids and husband, one special family activity is doing theatrical productions together, including Fiddler on the Roof, the BFG, Seussical, lots of them. What do they say? The family who does plays together stays together? Something like that. Okay. I can't say it's been a perfect system. I often feel guilty about the lack of time that I spend with the kids. But on the positive side, we have 6 very independent, outstanding, and talented kids. They rely on each other and they help each other out. I hope I'm not just rationalizing being a working mom, but I think that not having helicopter parents has helped them to develop their creativity and thrive. And this one here, that's my son and daughter with the Utah Student Entrepreneur Award. And then Chelsea went on this last year to win the International Student Entrepreneur Award. So the global thing, won it for the whole world. So that was pretty exciting. So, and she started out at BYU in the business school. Okay. The fourth absolute to be successful in business is to manage your money. It's critical both in and out of business, and it's the leading cause of business failure. We've had a few store owners who have struggled with this, and one store owner we were really puzzled because they were constantly broke, and they were one of our very top stores. Well, as we analyzed their books, we found that in addition to their salaries, they had $50,000 in unaccounted for drops from the till. No matter how many times we told them that they shouldn't do personal drops from the till, they kept doing it, sometimes up to hundreds of dollars a day, and quite likely so did their employees. It would have been a simple thing to manage this daily and control their money, but they didn't do it. I guess I don't need to tell you where this story led. Eventually, even though this was one of our highest volume and most profitable stores, they failed to pay their rent and taxes, and eventually the business was seized by the tax commission and they lost everything. On the other hand, I can tell you some amazing money management success stories. Our very first Uptown Cheapskate franchisee carefully managed every expense. He kept his labor low and his rent was low, and within 9 months he had paid off his first store and was ready to open his second. A year and a half later, he came to us and said his first 2 stores were paid off, and he was ready to sign for stores 3, 4, and 5, and this is store number 4. The moral of the story, spend less than you earn, set a budget and follow it, plan for future expenses as you reinvest in your business, and then you can enjoy the fruits of your labors at harvest time. So if you've been thinking about a business and you're wondering, will my concept work? First of all, you need to know that entrepreneurship is risky. I know all about that. As a child, half the time we were broke and half the time we were rich, and my mom didn't know from one month to the next how she'd pay for groceries. Money came in fits and spurts, and there was a lot of financial uncertainty, but mostly things went well, but not always. Who would have known that after he built Saldair, that Great Salt Lake would rise 12 feet to a modern record high and completely flood the building and the slide that my brothers built. The Alpine Slide was another interesting story as nature played havoc on the business. A sunny summer weekend meant tens of thousands of dollars of income. A rainy weekend was a tragedy for our family because the slide couldn't open and there was no income to pay the debts. And don't forget the porcupine factor. A porcupine decided to cross the track one day just as a man was racing down the hill. Ouch! This and some other accidents caused my dad to lose his insurance and then the whole business. Base Camp has 2 great success stories, Kid to Kid and Uptown Cheapskate, and that are doing really well. And we have 2 failures. We had a business called Clear Bra. There was an auto product, and when the economy fell apart, so did our franchise. And then we did a similar one called Clear Plex for windows that also didn't work. So how can you minimize the risk? Identify a legitimate need that your business can fill. In my case, it was finding an affordable way to outfit and equip a growing family. For Uptown Cheapskate, the need to keep picky young adults in fashionable clothing was the niche that they decided to fill. Then identify your talents and how you can use them to meet your needs. So my talents, I'm a bargain hunter, hard worker, good communicator, I learn fast, and I'm adaptable, and which fit in really well. So every business starts with an idea, but is nurtured with time and money. So you've got to find a way to fund your venture. As I mentioned, our goal was, our original goal was to have 100 stores in 5 years. Well, it's been 20, and we'll reach that number this year. Our main competitor, Once Upon a Child, is 3 times as large as we are, and they got there by going public. We decided that we wanted to grow at a slow, steady pace and keep our company family-owned, and that's been a good option for us. As far as money, you can use equity in your home, your 401k, stocks or bonds to fund it, take out loans from family or friend, or do franchising. We like the franchise model because it allows us to maximize our strengths and help other people to grow through the franchise partner. So I've got like 2 minutes. If you I can open it up for questions. No questions?
How many staff do you have to support all of these stores around the nation?
Okay, we had, last year we had about 15, and this year we have more than doubled our staff to 32 right now. So we decided that this year was going to be a real growth mode, so we had to hire staff to be prepared for that.
I'm just curious, why Portugal?
Why Portugal? They found us. A husband and wife team over there found us on the internet, came over, met with us, and we just really hit it off, and they've been great business partners. So they support the stores there, and we support them. And we decided Portugal because it gave us a good excuse to have to travel to Europe every year. So that's been fun.
Do you have interest in other international locations, or will you just develop that if the interest?
We'll develop it as the interest comes. We've talked to a number of people, but nothing has come through. We've got to find the right partner if we're going to go international. Well, thank you for being such a wonderful, polite audience, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.